Go ahead, Commissioner.
There's been another arson hit.
Where?
He hit the Sharkade.
No!
Tell me something survived.
He signed his work, kid. The bastard's got a name.
Our universe rests on the uneasy border between two worlds. The world of man, ordinary and stable, and the world of games, imaginative and chaotic. Where these worlds collide, one man is called to stand for reason, maintain the balance, and destroy ignorance. He is the Game OverThinker.
Sharkade. I remember you. How long has it been? Too long. Too late. This used to be a happy place. A good place. Safe place. I remember it well. Cheesy neon lights, the fish tank, even the mascots in their stupid costumes, the smell of overpriced pizza and chicken fingers, onion rings, laughter of children, families, and above all the dissonant chorus of 100 cabinets and 100 chiptune songs. People made memories here. I made memories here. Good ones. God, how long had it been? Years? How many times had I passed it by? Why didn't I go in? Because I could go later. It would always be there. Taken for granted. Stupid fool. Some overthinker you turned out to be. It's gone now. Destroyed. Turned to ash and rubble by a monster who calls himself PyroThinker. He wants my attention. He's got it. You'll pay for this, you son of a bitch. It's only been a few weeks, and already the bones have been picked at. The weeds are already reclaiming the land. In a month it'll be as though it never existed at all. Just like the others. All the others. The arcades. Every day another one vanishes. PyroThinker didn't burn them all. No, we let them disappear. We let them down. They were the soul of gaming. The temples where generations got their first taste of video glory. They opened our minds and showed us the way. And we abandoned them. Why? Well, because it was easy. Gaming eventually followed us home, to our computers and our TVs. They could be longer and more varied. You'd need a quarter every time you died. Yeah, when discussing the fall of arcade gaming, you do kinda have to acknowledge that they weren't perfect. They were primarily kiddie casinos, except you knew you weren't getting your money back, even if you won. The shift to the PC and console audience allowed the industry to mature, for games to become longer and more complex. Zelda wouldn't have worked in the arcades, and neither would Metal Gear, just for example. And let's not even get started on PC adventure games. And yeah, for a while there you did have an awful lot of brawlers that, let's face it, were basically the same game with different skins. But damn it, even warts and all, I can't help but maintain that there was something special about the arcades, and that as they've faded from prominence, they've taken a huge and vital part of gaming with them. So much of what gaming culture is was born there, and I worry that nothing is really rising up to take up the slack in their growing absence. For one thing, the arcade was the birthplace of gaming as a social experience. We forget that while video games were popularized by stand-up cabinets, they were invented in computer labs. Taking gaming out of an insular lab environment and putting it in an open space where it could be marveled at and enjoyed and, yes, monetized, was the defining act that sent the medium on the course it's on today. In fact, I'd say it's entirely plausible that without arcade cabinets, what were at first more accurately described as video simulations would never have become video games. Remember, there were cabinets before there were even arcades to put them in. They were stood up in bars and billiard parlors and restaurants, and the desire to bring that game home, much like you could with darts or ping pong or whatnot, was what drove the creation of game consoles in the first place. Most of the arcades themselves were originally built to house pinball tables, but when video games took over in the late 70s and 1980s, it created the environment where the idea of gaming culture could flourish for the first time. There'd be multiple games to try out and lots of other players to compete with and talk to. In the days before we had the web or even game magazines, arcades were localized social networks where gamers could hang out, compete, and swap urban legends of hidden power-ups and secret strategies. I think that's the real thing we're in danger of losing. The so-called arcade genres will survive just fine. Brawlers, fighting games, there's no real danger of them going completely out of style. Hell, if anything, they're in the midst of a full-scale revival in the mobile gaming world. Everyone is playing Angry Birds after all, and Angry Birds would have been right at home in a cabinet. No, what we're losing, what we may have already lost, is the idea of video games as a flesh-and-blood social experience. Yes, fine, online gaming is worthwhile in its own right, but there was something tangible about meeting friends or even total strangers at the controls of an arcade game and challenging them to a virtual fight, or teaming up, or whatever the mechanic in question was. Even when you were playing alone and just trying to rack up a high score to put your initials in, the very act of being in an arcade reminded you that the letters you were trying to come in ahead of represented an actual person. By abandoning the arcades, by abandoning the very idea of public gaming itself, we've unwittingly allowed ourselves to live down to the mainstream culture's worst gamer stereotype, the introverted, friendless loner ensconced in a digital womb, less connected by the day to the human experience. Now, I'm not so naive as to imagine that big-scale, dedicated video palaces like the Sharkade are going to become common once again. That just doesn't make much sense from a practical standpoint. Museums like the Fun Spot or family destinations like Dave & Buster's or Chuck E. Cheese, yeah, sure, but otherwise, probably not. But you know what I do think? Stand-up machines on their own, reoccupying their place as a fixture of the bar and billiard scene, could absolutely come back for the 21st century. In fact, forget the think part, I know they could. You know how? Because at least one of them already has. Golden Tee. Now, given that it's a golf game mostly aimed at older businessman dudes, it's understandable that the Golden Tee arcade golf franchise isn't on most core gamers' radar, but it's huge in its own right. In fact, it's so big that Golden Tee fans actually compete in inter-machine, interstate ongoing tournaments with their scores, stats, and even virtual equipment carried with them on ID cards. Now, I ask you, why couldn't that be applied to something other than a golf game? We know that the mobile gaming scene is huge, but that it's limited by the size and touch controls of smartphone screens. Well, what if you combine the two? Imagine a stand-up arcade machine in malls or restaurants or wherever, holding multiple games that were keyed to interface with everyone's mobile phone identity. Imagine, say, a fighting game with a player-specific leveling up system where you could point your phone at the machine, upload your character and stats, and take all the wins and losses you rack up there to the next location via that phone interface. And that's just right idea right off the top of my head. And yet, even if we were to somehow save the concept of public gaming, it still feels like a loss that the arcades themselves continue to stagnate and even die off. Guys, if you've ever taken anything I've said on this show to heart, if there's an honest-to-goodness arcade in your area, go there sometime. Spend some quarters, play some games. Do you want arcades to be something you have to tell your kids and grandkids used to exist? Damn it, guys, this is our heritage. Preserve it. Don't let them end up like this. All right, you bastard. You burned down this beautiful place, scarred your name into the ruins, calling yourself PyroThinker. You obviously wanted my attention. Well, you've got it. So what now? Did you leave something else for me to find? Gonna go torch some other place? Or maybe you show yourself, and I can show you what I did to the last guy you showed up calling himself Thinker. Why, I oughta...
Ninjas. Damn. No, you don't.